Welcome to the channel, fellow styrene addicts. Today we've got a review of the B-25J Mitchell Hasegawa 172 scale in the Foreign Air Service boxing. This kit came out originally in 2003 as a new tool, and Hasegawa has been reissuing this kit pretty much almost yearly. All the way up until 2021, where it was reboxed by Edward, where they threw in some resin and photo etch. And I think they called it the Nose Art Edition, where you got a special set of decals that gives you a lot of different markings that you can put on the aircraft. But this has come out in the gun nose version, different variants like the Navy version, this particular one being the Foreign Air Service, and then a bunch of the classic markings that the B-25 is famous for. This is an oldie but a golden standard. I believe this is considered the best or one of the best 172 scale B-25 models. Even though it is an older tooling, it's still hard pressed to find a better tooling and a better fitting B-25 in this scale. Now this kit I did get used at a swap meet or at a show, I believe, about a year or so ago. So it's not a brand new kit, but it is unstarted. Even though the parts are loose in the box and not sealed up, it hasn't been started. So it's kind of like getting a new kit, but at a bargain. Now one of the things I really like about this kit, let me move this out of the way here, is even though it is an older boxing of the kit, it has some really fine detail. Upon cracking open the kit and looking at it, the very first thing I noticed was, let me bring it up to the camera here, is the really fine in scale recessed panel lines here in the fuselage and throughout the model, even in the cowlings here, or I'm sorry, the nacelles for the engines. Let me see if I can get the camera to pick that up. There's just some really beautiful subtle detail, and with the right kind of weathering and oil washes and whatnot, you can really get all that to pop and bring this model to life. You can see on this particular sprue there's a lot of smaller parts. Looks like detail parts for the bomb bay. Looks like this might be the bomber's sight. And then of course you got the bomb bay doors here, also with a little bit of detail on the inside of those doors. The fuselage here has some of the framing on the bomb bay, as well as down here by the waist gunners, and then the tail gunner as well. Like with most 172 scale kits, if you're going to build this closed up, a lot of this detail will be hard to see or will disappear when you close up the model. But if you want to, you could get the photo etch sets that are out there or the resin sets and really go at it with the detail. Take lots of pictures and show it online and have it for your archives to show that detail is in there. Now one of the other things I really like about this particular kit is the wings. The wings, just like the fuselage, have a lot of subtle detail, especially here at the top and bottom of the wings. You'll see it's got some beautiful rivets right in through here, as well as all the panel lining that's just nicely recessed and doesn't seem to be over or out of scale or too deep. So it really will make for a great build. You can see there's virtually no flash on this. I've just found just small amounts of flash on some of the parts, and it might just be because the molds are getting dated and a little bit older, so some of the plastic may be seeping through. If you do find maybe an older boxing back in the early 2000s, you may not see all that flash, or very little of it, I should say. So after we get into those main parts, now we're going to get into some of the more smaller and detailed parts here. Now, because of my kit was used, some of the parts did fall off the sprue in there in the box in a little Ziploc bag. But you can see here, there's a lot of smaller interior parts. You've got some of the interior walls here. You've got your wheel struts, and then of course your rudders and your flaps here in the back. Again, great detail on a lot of these parts, even at this scale. It's almost a shame that a lot of this interior parts will kind of disappear, and it would be great to take lots of pictures and show that as you build this model. Of course, it's got the side guns here, and has some of the other guns. These look like maybe for the turret and then possibly for the tail gunner as well. A little bit on the back side here. And being that this kit has been out for a while now, there is lots of resin and photo etch if you feel that you need to go the next level on the detail. And then getting into the clear parts here, this I particularly liked with the kit is that in 72nd scale, of course, it can be very difficult to mask, especially if you're not using pre-cut masks to mask these smaller canopies. But Hasegawa did a really good job, especially here if you see in this piece right here. The frames are really well detailed in the clear part here, so it is easy to define where that frame will be and where you're going to mask up the canopy if you're going to do it all from scratch and just use small pieces of tape and mask all and whatnot to try to frame that up or to mask that up. You can see here as well. The frames are represented really well in the clear parts, crystal clear as well. Possibly a dip in some pledge or future would help clear that up even further, but just the way it is now, it is very, very clear. One thing I like here about these side clear parts here on the side of the fuselage where the side guns would be is they even have very, very small rivet detail to represent how this part would have been attached to the aircraft. So again, with the right kind of weathering, you can really get a lot of this detail to pop and make this kit really shine when it's all put together. And then finally we get into some of the other smaller sprues here. This is kind of a random sprue here. We've got just the inner bulkheads for the bomb bay as well as the wing supports, and then there's just looks like some random interior parts as well as some exterior, maybe the front fuselage parts here, some more guns. So just a random sprue. I'm guessing that some of the other boxings of this kit may have other sprues thrown into it. And then the last two sprues are the engines and the cowls, and then the rear, the wheels themselves. Now, of course, my other cowl right here, it fell out into the box. Now, the only complaint I've ever seen about this kit is the cowlings. Apparently, they're not quite the right shape or size, or something's just not quite right with them. So you can find aftermarket cowlings that will correct for that. But one of the things I really truly like about this is even though the wheels are a two-piece, bring that into the camera here, the detail is actually quite nice. And it does have the crisscross tread here on the wheels, but of course when you mate that together you're going to sand a little bit of that away, so you could take a razor saw and scribe some of that back in, or you could try to find a resin set that's maybe weighted and give you a little bit more realistic look and not have to deal with that. Now, the other thing I really like about this is the bombs. So the bombs themselves are a two-piece here, but as you can see over here on the sprue, the tail of the bomb is two separate pieces. So that allows for a nice thin plastic to really add to the detail instead of just kind of being a blob on the back of the bomb that a lot of older moldings have. They decided to mold that as separate pieces so you can really get that to look to scale. And then the other thing I really liked here is that the bell housing on the engine itself is a separate piece, so you can paint that before gluing it on. And then it even has some of the ports here that go on the cowling are separate pieces. They're tiny, but they are separate, and maybe a little bit of a small file, you might even be able to thin them out a little bit here and kind of make them look a little bit more hollow. So that is a nice touch that they did there with the Hasegawa kit. And then the last little bits here, of course, are going to be the instructions and the decals. Hasegawa has done their classic multi-fold instructions. I'll get my instructions in the right order here. So in the beginning or front page, it does your typical kind of synopsis of the aircraft itself, usually giving you some brief history, some specs, and some information about the aircraft, particularly this boxing and this Foreign Air Force version. And then first fold here, you get into the sprue legend, so you can find your parts a little bit easier if need be. One thing that Hasegawa, I find, doesn't do a great job is with their call outs on their colors. They tend to be a little bit generic, you know, things like semi-gloss black and tire black and sail color, whatever that means. So it's always a good idea to check your references, look for conversion charts for paint colors, and then, you know, even get on the Facebook and forums and different groups, and maybe even ask other people who have built this kit what other colors are comparable to the call outs that Hasegawa gives. Now, like most aircraft, you're going to start with the interior, and it looks like here they get you started with the bomb bay, and then they move into the cockpit. Now, like most instructions, that's not necessarily what you want to follow word for word. A lot of times you may have to modify, and based on painting and other ways that you may have to assemble, getting rid of seams and whatnot, you may have to refer to the instructions but not exactly follow them step by step. I always find that I have to kind of deviate from the instructions based on if I'm going to do any kind of resin or photo etch work, or just the way I'm going to paint the aircraft, that I need to change up the flow of the assembly. Then you're getting into where you close everything up here, and then of course you get into the wings and the wheels. Now, one thing I did notice when perusing through the instructions is Hasegawa here has instructions for some kind of a boarding ladder that you would put underneath the door to get into the into the aircraft, and that's obviously to support the weight of this model, because it looks like it's going to be a tail sitter since there's no ballast up front indicated. So that is one thing that they do not tell you how much weight you would need to put up front. I'm guessing that because of the clear nose version and the gun nose version, or for whatever reason, they don't have that indicated. There looks like there will be a little bit of space underneath the cockpit, as well as possibly in between the cockpit and the bomb bay. You might have to find some space, possibly in the just behind the cowlings, behind the engines themselves. Put a little bit of weight. So you're going to have to get creative with that. Now, I'll get into this in just a little bit, but my particular kit that I bought came with a bagged Revell boxing, and that does give weight indication, and I'll show you here that in a minute, what they recommend based on their boxing of the kit. The last thing, of course, is the markings and the coloring of the aircraft. Now, this is the Foreign Air Service. Let me grab the detail, or the decals. So here you've got very basic markings. You've got Free French Air Force, and then you've got Russian markings, as well as some decals for the cockpit as well, the dials and instruments and whatnot. Now, there are some masks out there you could easily get if you want to paint on the stars or the roundels. The stripes are typically pretty easy to mask off and paint. Hasegawa decals are not my favorite. I tend to find them a little bit thick. They don't react well to the solvents. Sometimes they just won't settle quite as nicely as I'd like them to, especially at 172 scale. You're getting into some finer details, so sometimes these thicker decals just don't quite work out. If I decide to do a Foreign Air Service aircraft per the box art, I would probably either cut my own masks. I do have a vinyl cutter. Or try to find some masks and try to paint as much of this on as I could, or maybe look for some aftermarket decals. But that's a personal call. You know, if you have good luck with Hasegawa decals, then, you know, go for it. Then in classic Hasegawa fashion, you've got all your color or your camouflage pattern here. So it looks like there's two versions for Russian. You've got a tricolor here with, I think, a lighter color and then darker color. Tricolor, two colors on top, one on the bottom, and then of course the French Air Force here with just a two-color scheme, top and bottom colors. So if you want to keep things a little bit simpler. And then I love how Hasegawa always does a good job of showing you all views of the aircraft, top, bottom, side, and then has all the placements of the decals. So it can make for an interesting paint scheme, you know, something you don't usually see. Foreign Air Service B-25s, that's kind of different, and it's all laid out here for you pretty easily. Now, as I mentioned, I did happen to get a bagged kit of the Revell version or boxing of this aircraft here. So here's the Revell instructions. The guy who I bought this from, he actually threw this kit right inside the same box. And then on step 23 of the Revell instructions, it does give you a weight of 8 grams. But that is also because the Revell version is the gun nose, so you don't have the clear parts to contend with, so you can just throw a weight in there and no one's going to see it. So that is why I'm guessing why the Revell does have the weight call up, but that at least gives you a weight to go for. You could of course weigh out 8 grams or get as close as possible and then spread that weight out throughout the front half of the aircraft and the wings in the glass nose version, but at least that gives you a starting point. So a little tip there on this kit because of the Revell instructions. And then I did happen to grab a few of the resin aftermarket bits that you can get for this kit. Quickboost has some nice little bits here, so we're getting into, it's got the propellers here. Not that the Hasegawa propellers are poorly detailed or whatnot, but I just really did like the resin ones a little bit better, especially with the middle section. It has a little bit better detail, so they were inexpensive, so I grabbed those. And then I did grab some machine gun barrels in 1/72nd scale, again for the Quickboost B-25. The machine gun barrels in the kit are decent. They actually do have the little cooling holes molded into the plastic, but they're a little bit on the thick side or the big side for that scale. These are much finer and thinner and more to scale, so that's the only reason why I got them. But again, hard to tell if you just go with out of the box. They're going to look great anyway. And then the last thing is the cowls that we talked about earlier, that the cowls in the kit are a little bit out of shape, out of scale, I think a little thick, especially on the front half of the cowling. So these Quickboost ones, a little bit thinner, more to scale, more to shape, and all the portholes and everything are really nicely cast in it. So another inexpensive upgrade that you can do to the kit. And then I know Edward has some photo etch out there, and as well as I think some resin wheels and whatnot, and I'm sure there's other brands out there that do the same thing. So again, if you are looking for a 1/72nd scale B-25, I highly recommend one of the many boxings of the Hasegawa kit. Again, you can find this under Hasegawa, Revell of Germany, and Edward as well. And there are boxings going back almost every year, all the way back to 2003. So lots of different versions or variants and lots of different markings to choose from. These kits, I find them used somewhere in the high 20s, low 30 range, and brand new they seem to be inching upwards into the high 40s, maybe even $50, and then plus or minus your shipping. So something to consider if you do see one at a good price at a show and it's complete, might want to snag it just for the deal. So as always, keep building. When I get this one started, I will definitely post some pictures and post some videos on how it goes together. And until then, keep your airbrushes clean and free flowing. Like and subscribe as always. Thanks for watching.